Hello and welcome everyone to today's ASK Online Academy. The topic of our webinar today is ASK Vista, our inventory management solution, actual volume consumption data at your fingertips. Let me introduce you to the speaker of today. His name is Charlie Hertz. He's a graduate from the Ohio State University in 2008 and continues postgraduate studies at LSU and MIT in the US. Charlie holds 2 technology design patents within the discipline of market intelligence and customer segmentations, and he works within ASK already for 11 years. And now he has evolved to head of global digitalization. Charlie has 2 kids and his favorite color is green. My name is Isabel Dickmann. I'm the current communication specialist at ASK Chemicals. I have a master degree in media management. I am working with ASK for 3 years already now. Today, I will guide you through the webinar, and at the end, we hope we can answer all your questions. Before I hand over to Charlie, I need to have a few organized notes to tell you. For data protection reasons, you not clear names and pictures and cameras aren't be shown. You can't see them. That's also why we just have pictures that you can see. Of course, we would like your input, so you can submit all your questions that you have via the chat function in the box on the bottom right. And of course, we will try to answer all of your questions at the end of the webinar. We will not interrupt the webinar presentation until the end. Thank you for understanding. If we are unable to answer all questions today, of course, our expert and Charlie will get back to you afterwards. So be a little patient, please, with us. And of course, maybe you have colleagues or somebody else who couldn't make it today. Of course, we will record the version of the webinar and it will be made available afterwards. That's it from my side. Now I hand over to Charlie and I wish you a nice presentation.
Excellent. Thank you, Isabel. So, hi, everyone. I'm excited to talk to you about supply chain and logistics and some of the new technologies that are really coming into the marketplace. Many technologies already exist within the supply chain logistics space, and we'll get into some of those, but it's very neat to see new technologies like IoT impacting supply chain and see how it's benefiting manufacturing companies and our customers. So I'll start though with the problem. And the problem within supply chain and logistics within manufacturing is always going to be our major KPI known as OTIF, so on time and in full. We're all operating on very thin margins in terms of trying to get our raw materials just in time and producing product and then sending that material to our customers just in time. The key phrase here is just in time. And it is a challenge today to optimize OTIF. And we'll talk about how some of the new technologies today can actually help that KPI. But it starts with a concept. So we'll go into a concept, and we've talked to many different customers about really what are the problems that they're having with their raw material suppliers. And we'll look not only at customer need statements, but solution statements. And the solution that we have today is called ASK Vista. It is an IoT supply chain design language solution. It's a mouthful, but don't be intimidated by IoT. You likely have IoT in your home, whether it be a Ring solution or a Nest solution. any kind of smart home solution is really just an IoT solution that is solving a specific problem. And that is what we are doing here today with ASK Vista. We are talking about solving specific problems within supply chain with our IoT solution. But of course, the reliability of the data is essential. If we do not have reliable data, then all we have are hyperbolic statements of solving problems, and really we don't have a solution at the end of the day. So I'll go into the reliability of the data so you can understand, do we have a solution and is it for you? All right, but we will start first with the problem, or in the plural sense, problems. So we have many. We have, and I would be remiss not to start with resources, but we are in the Great Resignation. And you don't have to be in manufacturing to see that this is a challenge. I was just flying from Germany back to the United States a few weeks ago. And when you come into the States, you have to drop off, you have to get your bag, you have to recheck it, and then you got to hope you can make your just-in-time connection. And of course, they did not have enough baggers. And we waited over 30 minutes to get our bag. And then a lot of people wound up, not surprisingly, missing connections. One little hiccup within this entire process can ruin everything. Okay, so great challenges in terms of resources. Now, technology. The key to digital transformation really comes down to three different things. It starts with ubiquitous data, and that's a fancy way of saying you have access to all data types, right, that are necessary for your IoT design language. Now, also, you have connected data. You need data that is connectable. Otherwise, you cannot process it, which is the last part of it, which is massive processing power. Technology within this space has really been reduced to really telemetry systems that track the volume of a tank, but they are not connected to outside third parties or your supplier so that you can actually work together on a solution that meets all of your requirements, right? The next one is logistics. And logistics is difficult because it's hard to get trucks nowadays. They're expensive and they're not always reliable in terms of picking up empty containers from a customer site and getting them back into your production so that you can keep your entire manufacturing process going, right? The last one is raw materials or lack thereof. It's more difficult today than ever to access raw materials, and they tend to be expensive. So the natural issue here is that suppliers try to stockpile raw materials, but of course the effect there is that you're going to have higher working capital, which is not an ideal situation. Okay. Looking more deeply into these issues, I want to go back to the raw material availability. We, as ASK Chemicals and other foundry consumable providers, we do not have the greatest insights and transparency to where our raw material stocks are actually located. Maybe they're stopped at a border trying to get through border protection, or we just simply don't know where they are in transit. That's a big problem when you have just in time, because if you don't have that truck coming on time, then you're going to try to produce products for your customer and not be able to get them to them just in time as well. So that is a hiccup in the system. What we need is transparency all throughout the line, right? Resource constraints, less time for customers to focus on stocks. The main focus of our customers is producing quality products or quality castings, right? Focusing on their raw materials is also important on the back end, but when you have resource constraints, what happens is your priorities start to change and you focus more on your primary objective, which is actually producing quality castings. And sometimes you can forget about the back end and how much material do we have to keep our production going, right? When you get into this case, you run out of stock, you shut down your production, you place a rush order, which then creates chaos on our end for producing new products for you. Right? The last one is data connectivity. We ship products not just in bulk, but also in IBC plastic totes. We ship it in steel containers, and really not having visibility into these containers, especially if you're in a situation where you're dealing with consignment, ultimately results in manual tracking, where you have to actually have resources go and track all the different containers, what the fill levels are, how much is being used. So we have data connectivity issues, or really lack thereof. We just simply don't have the visibility into containers, right? How are we solving some of these problems comes next. So traditionally, and there are more solutions, this is just the three I want to highlight today. We have scanning solutions. Scanning solutions is something that your raw material supplier like ASK is going to implement. You can implement scanning solutions like barcode scanning or QR code scanning. And it's essentially a moment in time, a timestamp, allowing you to have a piece of data that you can share with your customer to let them know that their delivery date is actually working out, right? They can see the transparency of where their product is whenever the QR code or the barcode is scanned, right? And this can be implemented very, very wide within a manufacturing group, right? The challenge, of course, is it's a timestamp. It's telling you essentially where something is in a process. It's not telling volumes or anything like this. The next one, MRP, so material resource planning. MRPs are great in concept, not always in practice, because it's all dependent upon actually the inputs that you put into the system so it can create predictive forecasts, right? So what you have with MRPs is it's a tool that's going to allow you to plan for creating your final product for customers. And you take a month by month by month look at how much do we expect all of our customers to be taking. And then we can plan accordingly with our raw material suppliers to get in product. The issue, especially within Foundry, is you're dealing a lot of times with job shops. So a customer might get a job, they might not get a job. If they plan for that job and suddenly it falls out, okay, well then your MRP is actually, it's going to be impacted by that. So I'm telling you some positives and I'm telling you some negatives, right? The last one, available to promise, or ATP. Think of it like a reservation. You're making a reservation as a customer and you're saying that product is mine and I want a guaranteed delivery date of when it's coming. The problem is those promissory dates are not always kept and they have to adjust, right? They adjust quite often. If you're a customer on this webinar, you know that sometimes the date that you request is not always the date you get. And that is because you might actually have an ATP system on your supplier side that isn't implemented to the fullest extent, or we simply don't have raw materials to supply, right? And then you have to adjust. So that is a big issue, but it is also a good concept. It works really well, of course, with Amazon. That's the best example of it, because more times than not, Amazon works. They give you a promissory delivery date and they usually meet it, right? But that means that they have tons of stock that they can always guarantee. We don't always operate like that, right? We operate on just in time, okay? So now let's go into the concept, okay? And the concept starts with customer needs statements. Now, these have come from customer interviews that we have done. And on the left-hand side of the graph, you're going to notice latent. These are essentially benefits that might not be totally apparent in the beginning, but they are definitely beneficial, right? The customer might just not even realize that it's possible to do these things, right? But we'll get to those. The next column is ranking. These are subjective. This is actually just a ranking system that we use. So if you feel the rankings are not right, maybe you value something more than what we have shown here, that's great. That is applicable to you. Now, if you have customer need statements that aren't on this list, share them with us. We'd love to hear them. But let's go ahead and start with customer need number one, which is, I don't want to manage my supplier's container returns. In short, this is about empty containers, okay? So the customer doesn't want to manage this. ASK doesn't want to manage this. The need statement is automatic container returns. That's what we need to find in our solution, is how can we achieve that, right? Next customer need is, I don't always know if material is remaining in my steel containers. Now, it's no problem in terms of IBC plastic because you can visually see it. You can just look and see how much is in the container. It's not so with steel containers, right? Oftentimes, you can actually send material back or send a container back with material in it. You paid for that material. So that's a challenge. So it's volume tracking, accessible volume data by container type. Next one, I'm caught off guard sometimes and run out of material. This is all about notifications. And it goes to the problem statement that we had previously in the slides, where we were talking about the back end sometimes is less prioritized and you accidentally run out of material. Need statement, notify the customer when stocks get low. Okay. Next one, my resin and coating performs differently in cold or hot temperatures. Now, if you have very temperate climate, maybe this doesn't impact you. If you are in a very cold climate or have great swings within your temperatures, your product might fall out of spec. What some customers do is they simply just say, okay, in November, I'm switching over to my cold resin. And then maybe in May, I'm going to switch over to my warm resin, right? And this all comes down to notifying the customer on ambient temperature thresholds so that they just have a marker for when they should do this better, right? The next one is, I don't know where my order is, and neither does ASK, or just fill in the blank there. You could say your other supplier. It's all about tracking. Provide the customer real-time GPS location of an order. Wouldn't that be nice? The next ones are the latent benefits, and it starts with a simplified ordering process, automatic PO generation, right? This goes to the concept that I was talking about with telemetry. When you have an IoT solution built in with telemetry, then you can actually achieve what is automatic PO generation. I'll get more into that. The last one is, I want my supplier to inform me when reordering is needed. This is predictive reordering. This is taking essentially your actual consumption rate and your replenishment time on your raw material side, and then marrying those two together to predict when you should actually order. Maybe you think, okay, my tank is 30% full, I need to reorder. Well, you don't actually know our replenishment time. Maybe you actually should have reordered at 50% full, right? Creates a challenge, and that's something we can look into. Let's go deeper into this, though, into the concepts, starting with automatic container returns. This is the need statement that we identified in the previous slide. And it essentially, if you're looking at the picture, comes down to the simple statement, pick me up. It's a bunch of containers that are empty and they need to be picked up. What we need to design is auto grouping of empty containers and notification to proper trucking companies to actually come pick them up, right? Next one is accessible volume data by container type. When you look at a container, you should be able to know exactly how much is in it and at what date. So customers need a simple customer dashboard with volume measurements in real time, right? Something easy to understand so you don't have to walk up to the container and figure it out. You could be in the comfort of your couch and actually see the volumes of your containers. Next one is notify the customer when stocks get low. You can see here that it also goes back to simple administrative backend. You need to be able to set your threshold and be notified so you're not caught off guard, right? You want to spend less time focusing on things like raw materials and more time focusing on producing quality castings. So you simply want notified. Just notify me so I don't run out of material. Next one, notify the customer on ambient temperature thresholds, temperature alert, right? Ambient temperature is important because getting an actual temperature reading inside of a steel container, this isn't going to happen, right? We can measure ambient temperature, that's possible. And we can send customer notifications, and those can actually be adjusted in a backend, or at least that's what we want to achieve, right? The next one is provide the customer real-time GPS location of an order, right? That means if we actually utilize sensors like an IoT sensor, then it needs to be enabled with cellular. Then we can actually determine where is your order on the road so that you can guarantee when you're getting your product, right? The last one is automatic reorder POs. Threshold volume notifications are great because they allow us to know when you care about getting new product. We're not talking about predictive here. We're only talking about threshold volumes. And then if we could connect to our internal ERP system, your supplier's ERP system, then you can generate a PO for validation. We don't validate orders, right? Customers validate them, and we can simplify that process. But we need a solution, and what we have is ASK Vista. ASK Vista starts with a sensor, and a sensor that is packed full of different measuring systems, right? This little sensor that's about the palm of your hand does volume tracking via radar, GPS tracking, temperature tracking, shock tracking, which is actually really handy in the case of auditing an accident or noticing that your product is leaking. You can identify when maybe you had an incident happen that caused that event. Also, ATEX, very important, is explosion-proof certification, and it's coming soon. And we can talk more about ATEX later. Okay? But like I said, connecting data is the key and making it processable so that you understand what you're looking at. Otherwise, you're just collecting data, and nobody understands data unless you actually have a visualization of it so that you can make informed decisions. Right? So it starts with custom dashboard, right? Customers receive a custom dashboard with administrative rights. As many people as you want to actually have access to this will have access. The data secure. You have also the wonderful feature of container grouping. So if you had, for instance, 20 different containers and you have 5 of those containers are actually going to be material A, and then 15 of them are going to be material B. You can group those and get cumulative volume measurements so you know how much am I actually using in a cumulative sense so that you know when to reorder. Right? Now, in this dashboard, you also have the ability to set your threshold notifications. So when do you want to be notified, right? And that can be on a group or that could be on a container. And then ERP integration. So you have the ability to connect directly to our ERP for automatic purchase orders to validate. Okay. What type of containers does this apply to? It applies to our bulk tanks, our steel containers, and our IBC plastic totes. Okay. We are also piloting this on other types of containers, whether it's a pail or any type of container that we're really sending to our customers. Even pallets is being considered because you can actually apply a very inexpensive sensor to a pallet so that customers at least get the benefit of GPS tracking. Okay. Now, service options. We have 2. We have a visual package and an automation package. Some customers simply just want to see visualization, and that's great. There's no downside to the visual package, and the automation package is just adding threshold notifications and ERP integration with automatic POs for validation. You just pick. There is no difference, okay? The only differences here are the features, but any sort of discussions on pricing, things like this, please consult your ASK representative on this, and we can solve a lot of those problems there. Now, what do you get with these services? What you get is installation from a technical service representative from ASK Chemicals to install these on your bulk tanks. If you're dealing with mobile IBC plastic or steel containers, this is not an issue. This is something that's managed on our end within our manufacturing. If you do want these on your bulk tanks, it is something that will be administered by Tech Service ASK or one of your engineers. Whatever you prefer, we're here to help you install, right? We will handle the calibration of the sensors, which usually does not take more than just an hour. And we will also consider water prevention if necessary. If your bulk tanks are outside, then it's important. You'll find in a couple slides why you want to seal the outside rim of your sensors so that water doesn't get in. We will help you with your dashboard, and we will also help set up your auto POs for validation. Okay, so it's full service. Reliability. Now, this is the part where we have to look into what are the challenges that we have faced and how have we overcome them, right? So first, looking at bulk tank applications, the installation for this is relatively straightforward. Usually within bulk tanks, there's already a hole that doesn't need to be any more big than 1 to 2 inches that we can actually place a sensor onto. Now, the key here is not having metal blocking the sensor, right? So these can actually be a PVC, a plastic, a glass even. As long as it is not metal, the sensor can read through it, okay? So that's the key there. And again, installation is no more than a day and you're up and running. Now, data validation, when we first started this process, we noticed here in this Exhibit A image, you're going to notice the line here. This is the fill level. And you'll see some points where it spikes up and then it goes level and then it spikes up and then it might go down a little bit. These are anomaly readings, right? What we didn't realize is that sometimes you actually might have objects within the tank, whether it be a mixer or anything that would actually prevent this from getting consistent readings. And what we were able to do is level that out so that you have in Exhibit B a quality, understandable data point where you see a smooth usage rate that you can rely on within your measurements. So this was something solved, but yeah, there were problems in the beginning, and these are nice to get fixed now so that we have trust that we have quality data points. Okay, moving to mobile containers. Exhibit A, we're looking actually at a mobile steel container. You see here the device is sitting on top of a little PVC disc, and it is measuring the volume within a steel container, right? Now, the IBC plastic is even an easier process. It's really, there's an adhesive that's on the back of the device. It sticks right on top of the IBC plastic tote. You can stack these. It does not impact the sensor in any sort of way. And actually, even during the cleaning process, you can essentially shoot the sensor and it will not actually damage it. So it is fixed on there with a clip. It is not going anywhere. Okay. The same challenges, though, that we saw in the bulk tank were present in the steel container. Really, this applies primarily to steel containers, and it's because of reflections. If the installation is not shallow enough, and actually the sensor has to go through a long hole, metallic hole, you're going to get reflections, which cause some of these anomaly readings. Now, simply installing it very shallow onto the top of the steel container allows these anomaly data readings to go away. Okay. Now, since we're talking about data, we need to talk about data security, right? There is, first off, disclaimer, no such thing as a foolproof IoT solution. You can actually connect. There's reports of hackers even being able to connect into people's vehicles that have IoT devices inside of them and shutting them down. So that is extremely dangerous. But this is just to point out that IoT by nature is something that is relatively open, but of course you can take preventative measures and make it very secure. So what we have here in ASK Vista is that we maintain the highest security standards to protect your data. The data is transmitted, encrypted, and secured on European servers. If you have questions about data security, I can get you into contact with one of our partners, and one of our technical solution experts can discuss exactly the steps that have gone into place to ensure that this is actually a secure system. Okay. Now for the case study. So our case study starts with a foundry that is located in Germany, a steel foundry. The task and challenge was really high workload for volume tracking and reordering when going out of stock. Our solution was to put a ASK Vista device onto their bulk tank and track volume, and give them also the benefit of automatic PO generation. So the result, volume is tracked constantly. Whenever 30% binder hits, the purchasing department is informed, and automatic PO generation is presented so that they can validate it. So this solution that we have on bulk tank has actually been applied to dozens of foundries in North America, Mexico. We are starting in Brazil, and also expanding for Europe. So this is a solution we feel confident in and is being applied throughout our regions. Conclusion. Really, you have three key things to take away: automation, safeguard, transparency. Automation, we are about automatic container pickups, automatic PO generations, and these create efficiency benefits. Safeguard, we want to safeguard against your production stoppages and raw material spoilage. And this can happen especially through the temperature tracking. And the last one is transparency. We want to give you transparency into your stocks and where your material is located in transit. Okay. So thank you all for listening to the presentation. Happy now to give it back to Isabel for any questions. And thank you all again.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie, for this interesting presentation. I see some questions that we have from participants. Let me start with the first one. Can ASK Vista be integrated with already existing telemetry?
Yeah, so telemetry is going to be tracking your volumes. And so yes, it can, but it doesn't actually require a direct connection into the telemetry system. So telemetry is beneficial for the operators of the tank. They can see a visualization of how much volume is in the tank, and that's a benefit to them for sure. What this does is exactly the same thing, but with the connectivity ability and then the processing power via the dashboard. So there are no restrictions. If you have telemetry, we can also apply this, but we can actually enhance it as well.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for the answer. And I see a next question. Let me get to it. Does the ASK Vista have a battery life?
Yes, it does have a battery life of 5 years. So these devices, it all depends actually on how much you are sending data to a server. So the more you send, the more battery life is used. The guarantee is right in 3 to 5 years. If you're sending data points at all times throughout the day, okay, yeah, expect a 3-year battery life. If you're doing a few times a day, you can look more into the longer range of 5 years. So it's a fairly significant battery life.
Oh, that's good to know. Good. Another one. I see here. Are there any restrictions on the type of liquid material that could be monitored within the tank? For example, explosive material.
Yeah, so that's the ATEX that I discussed in the beginning. So ATEX is it's a certificate when you're in explosive environments or using explosive materials. really what's required is a certification of the device. So these devices that we have are being certified right now, and we expect them in November. Now, we can certainly use the sensors, the non-ATEX sensors, with things like water-based coatings, anything that would actually not be a explosive or flammable material. But it's a good question and something that is certainly on our radar and coming soon.
That's good to know. Yes, and I see another one. So where can you host the data? Can you host the data on our server? So I guess the server of the customer, or does it have to be on an ASK server?
So it is on a ASK server. If you're interested in really keeping all of your volume data in another location, it's not something that's completely out of the question, because really connectability, when I was talking about digital transformation and one of the key components being connectability, really you want to get the benefit out of the dashboard. So it's not so important, where the data is stored. If you have a very strict security policy that, the data is going to stay on your side, fine. But you just want to make sure there's connection so that you get the benefits out of the actual visualization of the data.
Okay, great. So far, I don't see any further questions. If you still have one, you can just type it in. Otherwise, I would say we have reached the end of today's webinar, of the presentation. Thank you, Charlie, for all your answers to the questions. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and that we can welcome you next time to another ASK Online Academy webinar. Before I leave you to the rest of the day, I would like to present some additional digital services ASK is offering. On our website, you can find the product finder, so you can search for specific values and you can find your product faster that you would like to try and use. Of course, we have technical paper and white paper that we are offered to you. We share it with you so you get our expert knowledge. If you have a topic that isn't answered while in the white papers or technical papers, we have the option to connect with our expert directly through our Ask the Expert files and forums, and of course all our live and on-demand webinars we offer for you also on our website, especially the on-demand version. Maybe you want to go there and have a look. So that is the end for today's webinar. Thank you all for joining. I hope you liked this as much as I did, and I look forward to your evaluation that you will find when I now close the webinar directly afterwards. Thank you again, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.